The Quantum Paradox, A Race Against Time and Fate. Chapter 1. The Quantum Paradox. She woke up in a cold sweat, panting heavily. Her heart raced as she tried to grasp onto the fragments of a dream that seemed too vivid to be just a figment of her imagination. Her gripping sense of horror only increased as she realized that those fragments were still fresh, alive and pulsing inside her brain. She got up from her bed, stumbled to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on her pale face. She tried to push away the thoughts that were tearing her mind to shreds, but the images kept flashing in front of her eyes, refusing to go away. She tightened her grip on the sink, her knuckles turning white. A cold breeze wafted through her open window, making her shiver. She looked up at the sky, at the endless stars that seemed so far away, yet so close. She tried to take a deep breath, but her throat was parched, her voice caught in her chest, suffocating her slowly. She shook her head and realized she had to focus. She was a scientist and had a job to do, a mission to fulfill. She had devoted her entire life to the study of the quantum world, to understanding the paradox that lay at the heart of the universe. She rubbed her eyes and slowly made her way to her laboratory, her heart still pounding. Her colleagues were waiting for her, huddled around a large metallic structure that seemed to hum with energy. They all turned to face her, their faces solemn, their eyes full of worry. "We have a problem," one of them said, his voice laced with urgency. The experiment went wrong. She felt like her ears were ringing, like her world was collapsing around her. The experiment was her life's work, a way to break through the veil of space and time, to see beyond the horizon of human understanding. "What happened?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "It's the paradox," the second colleague said. "We thought we could control it, but it's like a wild beast, unpredictable and uncontrollable." She felt a chill run down her spine. The paradox was the cornerstone of her research, the enigma that had kept her up at night, the mystery that she had been trying to solve for years. But now, it seemed like it had taken a life of its own, like it had broken free from the shackles of science and reason. "We have to shut it down," she said firmly. "We need more data. We need to understand what's happening." But it was too late. The metallic structure shook, sparks flying from its edges. The air hummed with energy, with a force that felt both familiar and alien at the same time. She watched as the structure started to crack, as the paradox took hold of it, twisting and distorting it like a piece of paper. She felt a wave of panic wash over her. They had opened a door that they couldn't close, they had triggered a reaction that they couldn't contain. She closed her eyes and braced herself for the worst. And then, there was darkness. Chapter 2. Into the abyss. She opened her eyes, and found herself in a place that defied all logic and reason. She was surrounded by darkness, a void that stretched out into infinity. The ground beneath her feet was solid, yet intangible, like she was standing on a web of shadows. She looked up, and saw a pulsing light in the distance, like a beacon in the night. She knew then that she had to move forward, to find a way out of this abyss. She took a step forward, and felt a shiver run down her spine. The ground beneath her feet seemed to waver, like it was alive and breathing. She took another step, and this time, she heard a whisper, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome," the voice said, its tone both soothing and menacing. "You have come a long way, but your journey has just begun." She frowned and shook her head. She knew that voice. She had heard it before, in her sleep, in her dreams. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am the keeper of the abyss," the voice said. "I am the gatekeeper of the mysteries that lie beyond your understanding. You have trespassed into my domain, and now, you must face the consequences." She felt a surge of anger, of defiance. She had dedicated her entire life to science, to the pursuit of knowledge, and she refused to be cowed by some cosmic being of unknown origin. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steady now. "I want you to understand the consequences of your actions," the voice said. The paradox that you have unleashed is a force of nature, beyond the grasp of humanity. It is a fire that cannot be extinguished, a storm that cannot be calmed. You have disturbed the balance of the universe, and now, you must pay the price. She gritted her teeth, and took a step forward. She would not be intimidated, she would not be silenced. I will find a way out of here, she said firmly. I will find a way to stop the paradox, to contain its power, to use it for the good of all. The voice chuckled, a sound that seemed to echo in her head, in her very soul. Very well, the voice said. But be warned, the path you have chosen is fraught with danger and despair. You will face trials and tribulations beyond your imagination. But if you have the courage, the determination, the will to persevere, you may yet survive. And with that, the pulsing light disappeared, leaving her in complete darkness. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. She knew that she had a long way to go, that she was only beginning to scratch the surface of the mysteries that awaited her. But she also knew that she could not give up, that she could not let fear and doubt consume her. She opened her eyes and started to walk into the abyss. Chapter 3. Betrayed. She had been walking for what felt like hours, her feet sore, her mind weary. The darkness had given way to a dim light, like the faint glow of a distant star. She had passed through tunnels of shadows and webs of light, all the time feeling like she was being watched, like she was not alone. And then, she saw him. He was standing at the edge of a cliff, his back turned to her, his hands clasped behind him. She recognized him immediately, the man who had been her partner, her colleague, her friend. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice harsh. He turned around slowly, a look of surprise on his face. "I could ask you the same question," he said, his voice measured. She felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over her. She had trusted him, had worked with him for years, and now, she felt like he was the enemy. "You know what I'm doing here," she said, her voice shaking. "You were there when the experiment went wrong. You saw what happened." He frowned and shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "The experiment was a success. We created a portal, a gateway to another dimension." She felt like screaming, like tearing her hair out. How could he deny what they had done, what they had unleashed? "You're lying," she spat. "You know that we messed up, that we triggered the paradox. You know what that means." He shrugged and took a step forward. "It means whatever we want it to mean," he said. "Power, wealth, knowledge. Think of the possibilities, the opportunities. We can be the rulers of the universe." She stumbled back, her mind reeling. She had never seen him like this, so cold, so calculating. "I won't be a part of this," she said, her voice trembling. "I won't let you use the paradox for your own gain." He took another step forward and smiled. "But you already have, my dear," he said. "You see, I have been watching you all along. I know what you're capable of, I know how brilliant you are. And I know that you will be of great use to me." She backed away, her mind racing. She had to get out of there, had to find a way to stop him, to stop them. But it was too late. He lunged forward, and before she could react, he had a gun in his hand, aimed at her head. "I'm sorry it had to end like this," he said, almost apologetically. "But you left me no choice." And then, there was darkness. Chapter 4. The Forbidden Planet. She woke up in a strange place, her head throbbing, her body aching. She took a deep breath, and realized that she was not on Earth anymore. The air smelled metallic, like ozone, and the ground beneath her feet was a strange shade of purple. She looked around, and saw that she was in a city that seemed to defy all the laws of physics and architecture. The buildings were tall and spindly, like needles piercing the sky, and the roads twisted and turned like serpents. She took a step forward, and heard a voice in her head, a voice that seemed to come from the very air around her. "Welcome, stranger," the voice said, its tone both curious and cautious. "You have entered the Forbidden Planet, a realm beyond the reach of mortal beings. What is your purpose here?" She frowned and shook her head. She had no idea how she had ended up here, or what this place was. "I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm lost. I'm confused. I need to find a way back home." The voice chuckled, a sound that made her skin crawl. "You cannot leave this place so easily," the voice said. "The Forbidden Planet is a prison, a place of exile for those who dare to defy the laws of the universe. You must find a way to prove your worth, to show that you are not a threat." She felt a surge of frustration, of despair. How could she prove her worth, in a place that seemed so alien and hostile? And then, she saw a figure in the distance, a figure that seemed to be running towards her, waving its arms. She squinted, and realized that it was a man she recognized. "Help me!" he shouted, his voice hoarse. "They're after me. They're going to," and then, he was gone, pulled into the shadows by an unseen force. She felt a knot in her stomach, a sense of urgency. She had to find out what was happening, had to find out who he was, and who they were. She started to run, her heart pounding, her mind focused. She ran through alleys and corridors, up and down staircases, all the time feeling like she was being followed, like she was running towards her own doom. And then, she saw them. They were a group of beings that seemed to be made of smoke and fire, their eyes burning with a fierce intensity. She skidded to a stop, and realized that they were blocking her path, like a wall of living darkness. "You do not belong here," one of them said, its voice raspy and cold. "You are an intruder, a danger to us all. Surrender now, or face the consequences." She took a step back, her mind racing. She had to talk her way out of this, had to find a way to reason with them. "I mean you no harm," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm just lost, just trying to find a way out of here." The beings chuckled, a sound that made her shiver. "You are lying," another one said, its voice deep and menacing. "You have been sent here to disrupt our way of life, to challenge our authority. But we will not be defeated so easily." And with that, they attacked, their fiery claws and tendrils lashing out at her. She closed her eyes, and braced herself for the worst. But then, something miraculous happened. She felt a surge of energy, a power she had never known before, coursing through her veins. She felt like she was alive for the first time in her life. She opened her eyes, and saw that the beings were backing away, their eyes wide and fearful. "She is the chosen one," the first one said, its voice awed. "The one who will save us all." And with that, the beings disappeared, leaving her alone, in the midst of the Forbidden Planet. She took a deep breath, and realized that she had a purpose now. She had a destiny to fulfill. She was the chosen one. Chapter 5. The dark side of the universe. She walked through the dark corridors of the universe, her steps echoing in the emptiness. She had been traveling for what felt like an eternity, through galaxies and nebulas, through realms of light and darkness. And now, she had reached the edge of the universe, the place where light ended and darkness began. She looked out into the void, and saw a shape that seemed to be moving towards her, growing larger and larger every second. She felt a shiver run down her spine, a sense of apprehension. What was this shape, this thing that was coming towards her? And then, it was upon her, a massive black hole, swirling with a malevolent energy. She felt like she was being sucked into it, like she was one with its darkness and power. But then, something miraculous happened. She felt a force that seemed to emanate from within her. She felt like she was pushing back against the black hole, like she was resisting its pull. She clenched her fists, and realized that she was not going to be defeated so easily. She was not going to let the darkness consume her. She closed her eyes, and focused all her energy on the black hole. She felt a surge of power, a power that seemed to come from the very fabric of the universe. And then, a bright light exploded from within her, a light that shattered the darkness, that obliterated the black hole. She opened her eyes, and saw that she was floating in space, surrounded by stars and galaxies. She felt a sense of peace and wonder, a realization that she was a part of something greater, something magnificent. And then, she saw the vision. It was a vision of destruction and chaos, of a universe torn apart by a force beyond comprehension. She saw planets exploding, stars burning out, entire civilizations annihilated. She knew then what she had to do. She had to stop the force, to save the universe from destruction. She closed her eyes and focused on the vision. She felt a surge of energy, an energy that seemed to combine the power of light and darkness. And then, she saw the force. It was a being of immense power and malice. It was like nothing she had ever seen before, a creature that seemed to defy logic and reason. She knew that she had to confront the being, to stop it before it was too late. She flew towards the being, her mind focused, her heart pounding. She saw the being turn towards her, its eyes burning with a furious intensity. "You cannot defeat me," the being said, its voice booming through the universe. "I am the darkness beyond the darkness, the void beyond the void. You are nothing to me." She smiled, and took a deep breath. She knew that she was not nothing, that she was everything. She was the light that illuminated the darkness, the force that held the universe together. And with that, she attacked. She flew towards the being, her fists blazing with energy, her mind focused. There was a massive explosion, a conflagration of light and darkness. And then, there was silence. She opened her eyes, and saw that the being was gone, vanished into the emptiness. She smiled, and knew that she had saved the universe. She had defeated the force. She had triumphed over the darkness. She flew back towards Earth, towards her home. She knew that there would be challenges and trials ahead, but she also knew that she was ready for anything. She was the light, the hope, the savior of the universe. Chapter 6. The final countdown. She landed on Earth, and took a deep breath. She looked around, and saw that everything was the same, and yet, everything had changed. She had seen the universe, had seen the forces of light and darkness in a way that no human had ever seen before. She knew that she had to tell the world, to share her experiences, to warn them of the dangers that lurked in the universe. She walked into the nearest news station, and asked to speak to the head of the network. "I have a story to tell," she said, her voice calm and measured. "A story that will change the world." The head of the network looked at her skeptically, but then, he saw something in her eyes, something that made him believe. "All right," he said. "Give me your story." And she did. She told him about her journey through the universe, about the forces of light and darkness, about the being that had threatened to destroy everything. The head of the network listened attentively, his eyes wide with wonder and fear. "This is big," he said, his voice shaking. "This is bigger than anything we've ever reported. We need to get this out there, to tell the world." And so, they did. They put together a special report, a report that detailed her journey through the universe, that warned of the dangers that lay beyond Earth. And the world listened. They listened to her story, and they were afraid. They were afraid of the forces that lurked in the universe, of the beings of light and darkness that could destroy them all. And so, they rallied. They worked together, in a way that they had never done before. They united, against a common enemy, against the forces of darkness. They put aside their differences, their conflicts, their hatred, and they worked towards a single goal. They built ships, and they trained soldiers, and they developed weapons of immense power. And then, the final countdown began. The countdown to the battle that would decide the fate of the universe. The countdown to the final showdown between the forces of light and darkness. She stood at the forefront of the army, her heart beating fast, her mind focused. She knew that this was it, that everything came down to this one moment. The ships launched, and they soared through space, towards the heart of darkness. And then, the battle began. It was a battle like no other, a battle that shook the very foundations of the universe. The ships clashed, and the weapons fired, and the beings of light and darkness fought with a ferocity that defied imagination. She fought, too. She fought like she had never fought before, like she was the embodiment of the universe itself, like she was the force of light that destroyed the darkness. And then, it was over. The darkness was defeated, the beings of light emerged victorious. The universe was saved. She looked around, and saw that everything was the same, and yet, everything had changed. The world had come together, had united against a common enemy, had fought for a common goal. And she knew that this was the beginning of a new era, an era of hope, an era of peace. She smiled, and knew that she had done something great, something that would be remembered for generations. She was the savior of the universe, the one who had triumphed over the darkness. And she knew that she would always be the light, the one who shone in the darkness. Chapter 7. The ultimate sacrifice. She looked out into the stars, and saw that everything was beautiful and peaceful. The universe had been saved, and the world was united in a way that it had never been before. But she knew that there was one final task that she had to accomplish. One final sacrifice that she had to make. She had to leave, had to journey back into the universe, back to the place where it all began. She knew that this would be the last time she would see Earth, the last time she would see her loved ones, the last time she would be a part of the world she had saved. But she also knew that it was her destiny, her purpose, her ultimate sacrifice. She said her goodbyes, to her friends, to her family, to the world. And then, she boarded a ship, and journeyed into the universe. She soared through the stars, towards the heart of the universe, towards the place where light and darkness met. And then, she saw it. The being, the one that she had defeated, the one that had threatened the universe. It was there, waiting for her, its eyes burning with a furious intensity. "I knew you would come," it said, its voice cold and menacing. "I knew that you would seek to destroy me." She smiled, and shook her head. "I'm not here to destroy you," she said, her voice calm and measured. "I'm here to make the ultimate sacrifice." The being laughed, a sound that made her skin crawl. "Sacrifice?" it said, its voice dripping with contempt. "What sacrifice can you make that would be greater than your defeat at my hands?" And then, she did something miraculous. She gave herself over to the being, allowed it to consume her, to absorb her into its darkness. It was a sacrifice beyond all sacrifices, a sacrifice that no one had ever made before. And with that sacrifice, everything changed. The being was no longer a threat, no longer a danger. It had been transformed, had been infused with light and hope. The universe was saved, in a way that no one could have ever imagined. And she was gone, part of the universe, part of the light and the darkness. But her sacrifice was not forgotten. It was remembered, by the world, by the universe. She was the one who had made the ultimate sacrifice, the sacrifice that had saved the universe. And she would always be remembered, as the light, the hope, the savior of the universe.